Hello, once again, it's Justin Strawn from Maroon and White Nation. Got another Periscope chat going right now, so wanted to talk about something that I was noticing last night while I was on Twitter. Yesterday was the regional finals. The super regionals were finishing up for college baseball, and the last few spots in the College World Series were being decided. And the entire time I saw people tweeting about it, talking about it, a lot of Mississippi State fans who were tweeting about it and giving their opinions on it. And the only thing I could think about was just the fact that Mississippi State was not involved, and honestly has been out of the discussion for college baseball really since about the midway point of the college baseball season, the SEC baseball season. And it just got me to thinking about just how disappointing the season has been for Mississippi State. So with that in mind, I began to think about what has been the biggest disappointments for me as a Mississippi State fan. A lot of them come from baseball and basketball. A lot of the times when the football team doesn't do well, it's not because they weren't expected to do well, it's simply just because the team wasn't very good. I mean, think about all the cream years. I mean, nobody really expected much out of those teams. The last 2 years of the Jackie Sherrill era, nobody really expected much out of those two teams either. So that is where we're going from. And now then, understand this is only going to be teams that I personally witnessed, teams that I actually saw. There may have been teams prior to the 70s and 80s that you saw that you were far more disappointed in, but personally that didn't affect me that much. They might have underperformed more so than the teams I'm going to list today, and this is only going to be the big three that I'm going to be talking about. So you may, like I said, you may have some that you are more disappointed in, but these are the ones that I felt the most disappointment in. This only goes really back to 1991. That was my 7th grade year. That was when I really became a diehard Mississippi State fan. And so, without further ado, I give you my top 5. At number 5 comes the 2004-2005 men's basketball team. Now, understand, you can have a disappointing team and still have a good team. For example, to this year's Kentucky basketball team. A lot of Kentucky fans are disappointed simply because of the fact that the Wildcats did not make it and win the national championship. They didn't get to play for it. They made it one game shy of it. A lot of them are really, really disappointed. They had that really great, awesome, perfect season, and then it goes down the toilet when they don't win the national championship. The 2004-2005 men's basketball team from Mississippi State had just come off arguably the greatest regular season ever for a men's basketball team in Starkville. The 2004 team was led by consensus All-American Lawrence Roberts. You had a team that was expected to be good, but probably nobody expected to be that good. They had played so well the previous year. It ended in a disappointing fashion, but nevertheless, that team brought a whole lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm to Starkville. And the following season, in 2004-2005, most people assumed it would be a really good team as well. In 2004 and 2005, Lawrence Roberts was returning. He was, like I said, a consensus All-American. He was on virtually every single All-American list from 2003 and 2004. You had some other returning starters as well, so we expected this team to be really, really good. It just didn't pan out that well. They were a decent team. They were a good team. They ended up being either an 8 or a 9 seed. I can't remember which. Doesn't really make that much of a difference which one you are once you are an 8 or a 9. It's basically, you can flip-flop the two. But they ended up getting an 8 or 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. They ended up losing to Duke in the second round of the NCAA tournament. They had a chance to beat the Blue Devils, and I can't remember. I think Duke might have won the national championship that year. I can't remember exactly, but still, there were a lot of really bad losses that year. I remember they lost to Alabama, and just one of the worst losses I had ever seen. I think the year that year and that loss to Alabama was the worst loss in school history up until the 2013 Bulldog team ended up just getting blown out of the water in some really embarrassing fashion. So that team, even though they were a good team, I still was really disappointed in just the outcome of the entire season. I think we underestimated just how much Timmy Bowers meant to that team in 2003, 2004. I think he was the glue that held them together and that really pushed them and led them on the floor. Lawrence Roberts was the star. He was the one who played the best and was the best player, but I think Timmy Bowers made more of a difference to the 2003-2004 team than we truly understood at the time, and I think we really missed his presence on the court in 2004-2005. So that is my number 5 disappointing team. And number 4, I went with the 2015 baseball team, the one that we just finished up with. I didn't know exactly where to expect this team to finish once the season was over. I didn't expect what we got. I'll say that. I think that's pretty safe to say for almost every single Mississippi State fan out there. No one expected Mississippi State to not even make it to a regional. Not only to not make it to a regional, but to finish dead last in the conference. Going into the season, I really felt like at worst you were looking at a borderline 2 or 3 seed going into a regional. So that was kind of my expectations going into this season. The expectations got heightened a little bit with the 13-0 start. That made me really start to expect a little bit more out of this team. And then to have them just fall flat on their face was really a bad disappointment. I thought they would do much better than what they did. I never saw finishing last in the SEC at the very, very bottom even being a possibility. So these were things that's why I really believe this team is one of the biggest disappointments for Mississippi State. I didn't put it at the top because I think there are others. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I expected much more than this, but I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from the get-go. They were ranked in all but one preseason publication. D1Baseball.com was the only one that didn't rank them, and even D1Baseball.com had them as a team that was just on the outside of their preseason rankings. The recruiting that John Cohen has been doing, I don't know if a lot of people say, well, he hasn't been recruiting power pitchers, he hasn't been recruiting power hitters. The power pitchers you could definitely make a case for. However, with power hitters, there are some players on this team that are supposed to be hitting the ball harder than they are. And you can put that on the coaching staff, the fact that they're not developing them the way that they should. And that's one of the problems that this team has had. So there should have been some expectations on this team. A lot of people will say, well, it goes back to Cohen's not recruiting right. If he's bringing in the recruits that he is, he should be doing better than he is. So there were some expectations. How much is arguable, but I really think there was a lot more to be expected of this team than what they did. And like I said, the fact that they finished dead last in the SEC is a lot of the reason why the 2015 baseball team makes my biggest disappointments as a Mississippi State fan. Number 3 was the 2011-2012 men's basketball team. This is the season that eventually led to Coach Rick Stansbury getting fired. It's also the season where the team just completely collapsed. It was a really tough year to watch. It was right before I started blogging for the Bulldogs at Maroon and White Nation. And just some of the things that went on in that year were just really, really disheartening. As we entered the 2011-2012 team, there were some decent expectations. Most people saw the Bulldogs as a NCAA tournament team as we entered into the year. How high of a seed was highly debatable. A lot of people saw them going into the season as probably around a 10 seed to start the year. But as they continued to get some early wins, they won I think it was the coaches, I can't remember what tournament it was. I think it might have been the Coaches versus Cancer. Hey, somebody from Birmingham, England. How are you doing? I hope that Mississippi State is what you were wanting to hear about. But anyway, the biggest thing with that team was the expectations got built up as the year went along. Like I said, the 2011-2012 team was expected to make it to the NCAA tournament. How good of a seed they were was debatable, but at one point the season got to a point where the highest projections I saw from Joe Lenardi or Jerry Palmer, any of those guys who do bracketology, as a 6 seed. A lot of people thought Mississippi State would be around there at one point in the season. I think that was right before it basically fell apart on them, when they were a 6-3 team in the SEC and looking like they were going to have a really good season. They did get out to a little bit of a rough start that year in conference play, but they were still playing well. I mean, they still had a good year. They before it all fell apart for the Bulldogs, they were 6-3 in SEC play. They had a really good chance to win the SEC West. Things were basically going about how you would have expected them to go, and then it just completely falls apart. Renardo Sidney obviously had a lot to do with that. The fact that he was not anywhere near the player that we expected him to be. The fact that there was really no one to corral him outside of the coaching staff. And a lot of people blame Renardo Sidney for Rick Stansbury not being the coach after that season. And